Hi, it's Paul, and today I'm an old man with a Ryobi One Multitool. Let's go have a look and see what it can do. So a typical use of a multi-tool is where you want to cut in a restricted area. So for instance, if you wanted to cut a floorboard going under a skirting board, right next to the skirting board, you'd typically use a multi-tool because the multi-tool can cut just the wood that you need, and it can cut flush right up to the edge. I don't know how well you'll see that, but that's literally up against the skirting board. Again, if you were cutting the skirting board itself, you might want to cut in directly into the corner. And so that's a typical multi-tool use. You might want to cut notches out of plasterwork or plasterboard or something like that to install something like a socket or a light switch or something. Anything that you want to do a sort of fairly small cut but fairly accurate, because you can always cut square ends on it. The disadvantage with a more traditional hand saw, or for instance a circular saw or whatever, so back in the day if you were cutting floorboards, what you'd have done is you'd have got your circular saw and you'd have cut along the circular saw, but because the disc is circular, it'll always cut more than you want it to cut. So the multi-tool is great for that. In another typical situation, you might want to cut something like a pipe, either flush to a worktop or where it comes out of a wall or something, or you might not have a lot of access to get a saw in and cut flush to the wall. And again, you'd put the right kind of blade in it, a metal cutting blade or a plastic cutting blade. This is plastic pipe, so you'd put a plastic cutting blade in and you could cut flush to the worktop excuse me, and right the way through to the wall, taking up not much more space than the pipe itself. Given that we're right up against some tiling now, what you can get, this isn't one, this is just an ordinary wood cutting blade that you can see I've used for cutting mud or something, but you can get a carbide blade and you can actually cut grout out between tiles. So if, as a for instance, you wanted to take a single tile out of a wall for whatever reason, maybe you needed to get behind it, maybe it's cracked and you just want to replace it, if you get the carbide blade for it, you can cut neatly down the grout line all the way around the tile, and you can take just the individual tile out. I've done this around one of our washhand basins where I needed to take 2 tiles out because I made the mistake of tiling all round the basin and then couldn't get at the waste trap or anything. So I needed to cut one of the tiles away to get at the waste trap because there was a minor leak on it. And I used a carbide blade on it to cut around the grout. I've also used one in a very similar situation to this, where I've wanted to get behind something because I couldn't get the screws or the bolts undone. So I put a metal cutting blade on, just forced the item away from the wall and just got in behind it and cut through the screws so that I could take the item off the wall. Can't remember what it was, a couple of years ago now, but it worked perfectly. Something else it's quite good for, with the sanding head on it. It's got a sanding head with a quick detach Velcro type sanding attachment, and then it's good as a detail sander to get into tight edges and corners. If you've got a traditional big round sander or a belt sander or something like that, or maybe an orbital sander, the traditional sort of third sheet ones, you won't get into the corners as well, and it will be good for something like that. And equally good if you're working on furniture or something along those lines. Again, as a detail sander, it will get right into the tight edges. I won't sand this, otherwise the family won't be too impressed. But you can get it right in tight, you can do all the detail that you need to get to. So having had a look at what it can do, let's have a talk about what it actually is, the tool I'm using, and some other things that you need to know about it. So the tool we're actually talking about is the, I can just focus on it, the Ryobi 18-volt RMT1801. So it's one of Ryobi's One Plus tools. Fits the One Plus removable battery range. I use I think it's the smallest of the battery range, which is this 18-volt 1.3 amp hour, and it runs perfectly fine. I haven't done a test on how long it will work for, like a run time, but it does the job. I would say it runs for a good 20 minutes for me if I want to cut through a floorboard or something like that. So I don't have any issues with the battery capacity. I have got a bigger 2 amp hour, and I must get myself a couple of bigger ones, 5 amp hours, for some of the other tools I use. In terms of the tool itself, so I showed you the sanding head, and the changeover of the heads is done with an Allen key, which comes with it. You undo the locating screw, and you take off whatever the head is that you're using, and you can fit a different blade. In terms of blades, they are many and varied. You can buy all sorts on the internet, on Amazon or whatever. I'll add a link to a blade kit. I bought a blade kit of about 30 odd blades off Amazon for about £8. And there are many others besides. There's a carbide ones that you can buy. This is a carbide sanding sort of abrasive one, so this will do grout and stuff like that. It's not ideal for between tiles because it isn't grout, it's not carbide on the edge and it's not carbide on the back. But if you were, for instance, sanding down an area, then it works fine. It's very, very abrasive, very rough, this. If I wanted something lighter, then I use the sanding disc type approach. So the tools change with hex key, Allen key, whatever you want to call it, and it's a fairly simple matter to take one off, put a new one on, and tighten it down. You can fit the blades in various different angles. They will sit all the way round. It's a 360-degree mount. I'm usually fitting them something along these lines. Put the hex key back in, wind it down, and that is locked in place. As you can hear, it makes a bit of noise. This is a sacrificial top on my bench, by the way, so I'm not worried about destroying it a little. But you can hear it makes a lot of noise. One of the guys who uses one of these regularly on YouTube refers to them as the noisy tool. Let's go and get the noisy tool out, and I know exactly what he means by that. One other thing that you can do with it, you can pull the head off it and you can put the head on at different angles. I have once found a situation where I was working in a floor cavity where I wanted to get the battery, because the battery's quite bulky. I wanted to get the battery in and still be able to get my hand over the top of it, so I did turn the head round. But generally speaking, I have the head that way round and it works fine. But you can put it in 4 different positions. So that kind of gives us an idea of what it can do, what the actual model is. I'll put a link to Amazon for it. Bear in mind it is an affiliate link, so if you click through and purchase it on Amazon, I make a very small commission for advertising, which is great. It helps me to buy the camera equipment and stuff that I use for the channel. Other than that, I guess the remaining question is, would I buy it again? And the answer to that is 100% yes. absolutely love it, really does the job. I will say the very first one I had failed after probably about 2 hours use. I was actually cutting floorboards with it and it failed mid floorboard, which was a bit disappointing. I've got no clue why, but I got in touch with Amazon. They sent me a new one next day, and a box to send the old one back, and I've never had it fault since. That was probably 2 years ago, and it's done a heck of a lot of work. You can see it's got some battle scars to it. It's been knocked about a bit. It's done some work, so perfectly happy with it. I would happily buy again. As I say, if you're interested, in the description below there is a link to buy one on Amazon, and I'll also find some links to some of the blades and add those in. And if you want to check out a bit more of the reviews and some of the other tools, then have a look on oldmanwith.com and you'll see some of the projects I've done and some of the reviews of other tools. Okay, thanks very much for watching. As always, if you would like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. More importantly, if you've got any comments, please put them in the comments below. And again, thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.